all the time. Well, most of the time. But it's vigilant constantly. Each member of the team about wanting to keep the team together for reasons of community and of survival. I would ask the board to take this into consideration when talking about moving forward with the school year in general.
30 seconds.
And I hope that they'll come to a decision that benefits the most amount of people in the most amount of ways. And I'm going to yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Mr. Helton. We always appreciate when we have students come to our board table to speak. Our virtual board table, I guess, is where we're at tonight. But thank you. Ms. Jenkins, go ahead.
Nicole Crable.
Kriegel or Cable?
You, hon, sorry. Cable. I typed it wrong.
That's okay. I'm Nicole Cable. I live in West Des Moines, but I'm the school nurse at Roosevelt High School, and I have 2 children who remain open enrolled in Des Moines Public Schools after we moved to West Des Moines 3 years ago. I have a 10th grader and a 7th grader. My 10th grader is a varsity athlete at Roosevelt. She runs cross country, track, and plays indoor soccer. I know that the guidance issued by the Department of Education on Friday clarifying that athletic activities and other activities could not move forward if we were virtual kind of threw everybody into an uproar yet again and prompted a large outcry from parents. But I would be mindful of the fact that the athletic activities that happen this summer are dramatically different than what will happen in the fall. We were engaged this summer in low-risk activities, baseball, softball, both being low risk, with relatively small numbers of students. As we move into athletics and activities for the fall, we look at a larger number of students across many more schools, and many more activities that are considered high risk. And when you say, how do I judge something to be high risk? Polk County Health Department actually issued guidance the 3rd week in July that outlined what activities for athletics are low risk, medium risk, and high risk. They indicated that based both on the level of contact involved in the sport and the location it takes place in, inside versus outside. Coach Steinbach spoke very well to the number of mitigation steps that they are attempting to take, and I don't take that lightly. I think every coach at Des Moines has worked very hard to try and mitigate the effort as best as possible. But I think it is tempting to say that we should try and find a way to defy on both instructional method and athletics activities. That will undercut the very reason that we are saying that we need to move forward with a virtual instructional model in the first place, which is that community spread in Polk County is not well controlled. When you look at the 14-day average of positivity cases for Polk County in the last 14 days, it's 8.4% and rising. We have 20 cases per 100,000. When you think back to what Dr. Osterholm has talked about in the past, his answer is that community spread should be less than 5 cases per 100,000. When you listen to his podcast, he talks about the fact that as we return to schools, we anticipate that those numbers will rise. And when you look to the media at the examples in Georgia, what you see is that large numbers of students and staff are quarantined even in the first 2 weeks of school. So when we talk about how we go back to school and provide high quality education for as many students as possible, that really is starting our instructional year in a virtual method. It is the best way to provide high quality, consistent education for all of our students. I know that means foregoing athletics and activities, and I wish we didn't have to make that choice. In an ideal world, I wish that the answer was we could engage in low-risk activities like cross-country, like golf, like some of the other outdoor sports that we have available to us, and that we could be creative about our non-athletic activities that are in person. But the DE is not allowing us that level of flexibility. And so we have a difficult choice to make. And as adults, that's our responsibility sometimes, to make the unpopular choice, to make the one that needs to be made. Until community transmission is brought under control in Polk County, providing instruction via a virtual method is the best way to get our students, all 33,000 of them, restarted on learning in a high-quality method. My daughter will be disappointed when she hears that athletics may not go forward. I have made that choice again and again with her this summer as I've tried to say, this is a good activity, this is not a good activity. It's a choice that we have to make. So I encourage you to put the instructional choice first, even though I know that's not a popular choice. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jenkins, can you please call our next speaker?
Anthony Schmidt. Anthony, are you on?
Anthony, I can see you, but I can't hear you. I cannot hear you.
Anthony, if you're not familiar with Teams, if you would float your cursor over the center of the lower portion of your screen, and you should see a microphone icon. And if you click on that to unmute.
I was going to say, it's showing him unmuted. We just can't hear him.
Might be difficulty with the microphone.
It could be. Yeah, we can't hear you, Anthony. Do you want to hop out and come back in and we'll call you again to see if we can get you to go? Or there's a phone number you could call in and we'll see if we can get you here in a few minutes and we'll go on to our next speaker and come right back to you. Okay, thank you. Ms. Jenkins, can you call our next speaker?
Yes, Asia Powell. Asia, are you on? I saw you earlier. All right, let's try Indira Schumacher again. Or Kathleen Jorgensen. Those were it. So if we wanted to wait for Anthony.
Yeah, let's give him just a minute here to see if he... And Anthony, if you did call in from your phone, I think you need to hit, I think it's star 61 to unmute.
Hi, this is Asia Powell. Can you hear me?
Yes. Ms. Jenkins, did you call Asia?
I did, yes.
Perfect. Then I'm glad that the direction I gave for Anthony helped her. Go ahead, Ms. Powell.
It did. Thank you so much for the opportunity to make a statement at this forum. So I am concerned that the federal government is putting us in a situation that has basically threatened to remove funding and many more things that I'm not well versed on, but based on the fact if Iowa goes to 100% virtual learning. I have a teenager who, yes, I would much rather have be at school. And she also plays sports, but I am concerned that our governor may force the school board to make a decision based off a federal mandate as opposed to what's really the best for our students, staff, teachers, and just our community and families in general. And so I'm wondering actually if there is a way individually as constituents or collectively as, you know, people concerned about the education and what's going to happen with it in Iowa can reach out to the federal government and basically attempt to stop that type of action, because I really don't think that the federal government has a right to come in and say what locally and our conditions in the face of a pandemic needs to happen. And that's really all I had to say.
Thank you. And I've been encouraging folks this whole time that to continue to reach out to the governor and state legislators because there are decisions that were made this summer that are impacting conversations that our board is having now. So thank you very much for your comments. Ms. Jenkins, will you call our last speaker again?
Yep. Anthony, are you back on? Anthony?
I'm not going to do this, Tessa.
Try the star 61 thing, Anthony. Looks like you're trying to use your phone. Try typing star 61 on your phone.
Hello?
Oh, we can hear you.
Sweet. Yeah. So my name's Anthony Schwint, and I was asked to speak today. I asked to speak today. In order to discuss the recent proposal of 100% online schooling, which would mean that there would be no in-person fall activities, i.e. like band, sports, debate, mock trial, etc. I'm a senior at Roosevelt High School, and I participated in cross country for the 4 years I've been in high school. I've earned my place as a captain on the team, and this year we knew it was going to be challenging. We knew we'd be met with adversity. We knew it was going to be a bit of a struggle getting going, but we took the precautions. We took the time to take planning into account, and for our almost 6 weeks of a season we've had so far, we've managed to stay case-free, and we've been able to build those relationships and communities from a distance, even though we might not be able to hug each other or get to know each other closely. We're able to, from 6 feet, have those conversations and get to know people, which is so crucial for students, especially the freshmen that I've had in my groups. And throughout my high school career, mental health has been a bit of a struggle at times. And I know that for me, cross country was an outlet. And like many other activities for students around me, these kind of extracurriculars have been outlets to cope with different mental health concerns or struggles that I personally have found beneficial. By no means am I trying to minimize the precautions and the importance of those precautions that we need to enforce. But I think my team alone has proven that with precautions, you can have a safe and healthy program and a successful program. And finally, I'd just like to leave it with one important kind of question, I guess, to ponder over is we did have the softball and baseball seasons when no one was in the school building. And with these activities, no one would also be in the school building because they'd just be going to do school at home. So I was wondering why other activities wouldn't be afforded the same opportunities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for taking the time to speak tonight. As I said before, we always enjoy having students speak at our meetings, and I'm glad that you persevered through the technology glitch to be able to let us know that. Ms. Jenkins, do we have any further speakers this evening?
We do not.
Okay.
I'm sorry to jump in. My name is Chris Morris at 3517 52nd Street. I would like to raise a point of inquiry, if I may.
Typically, we need speakers to sign up. So I'll ask when you're done that you email Erin Jenkins. I'm also going to ask that because we're past our public forum time and you weren't signed up, that you keep your comments to 90 seconds or less. Is that okay?
I just had one simple question. Thank you to you and the board for letting me ask the question. I've been in contact with Indira Schumacher, who is unable to attend the meeting this evening due to the schedule changes. She's given me permission to read a statement on her behalf, if that's something the board would like to hear.
Oh, Yes, please go ahead and we'll give you the normal 3 minutes then. Thank you very much for raising that for us. If you will just make sure to send your information so we can note who was reading a statement on her behalf when you're done.
Yes,
here.
I'd be delighted to do so. So my name is Chris Morris, and we wanted to reach out and raise a question that a previous speaker had raised earlier. I've also reached out to one of the board members in regards to the school resource officer program. We've got some concerns that were echoed by the individual that had spoken earlier. Our primary concern is that the school resource officers stand in our schools with their hands inches away from their firearms and create a culture of fear for a lot of individuals. We've reached out to the Des Moines City Council. We reached out to city staff. It's my understanding that numerous individuals have also reached out to Des Moines Public Schools in regards to information regarding the impact that school resource officers have. None of those requests, to our knowledge, have been followed up on as of the time of the statement being prepared. We would like more information on what training is available and required for school resource officers, the positive and the negative impacts that the school resource officers have on our students. One of our particular concerns is how the school resource officer program adds to the prison or the school to prison pipeline as it continues to feed the U.S. prison industrial complex. I find it very concerning as a resident of the city of Des Moines that this information is not available, and I wanted to bring it to your attention, and I hope that you'll be able to work with us to identify ways to get the Des Moines Police Department out of our schools, which should be a place of learning, not a place for people to be forced to, sorry, trying to read this, not a place for people and students to be reinforced with the notion that if they step out of line, a police officer will be there to put them in check. Thank you for this opportunity, and I will follow up with you with my contact information.
Thank you very much for making sure that we have your contact information. More conversations related to this topic are planned in the coming weeks. I just have
I understand. Thank you.
Thank you. I do have a brief statement that I want to just share on behalf of the board regarding activities. Health and safety are our primary concerns, but they cannot be our only consideration. Extracurricular activities occupy an important place in education, and for many DMPS students, participation in activities keeps them motivated and engaged in their classwork. Unlike much online instruction, many activities must be done in person. They're also entirely voluntary, and we respect the choices that our students, staff, and their families will make regarding whether they participate in extracurricular activities this fall or not. So that prefaces a little bit of our conversation for this evening. Without any further speakers.
Hi, this is Indira.
Hello?
You were calling me earlier. This is Indira.
Okay. Was the statement just read on your behalf, or am I getting my speakers confused?
I'm not sure. I wasn't able to get into the meeting until now.
Okay.
I believe he did say he was doing it for Indira.
I understand if you guys can't listen to me speak. I just wanted to say that I'm here now, if you guys could allow that or not.
Yes, we can. Our public forum is kind of extending a little bit longer than we anticipated, and I know that he'd read a statement on your behalf. Would you be okay if we gave you 90 seconds instead of the 3 minutes this evening?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, and we would invite you to come back and share additional remarks with us in the future if you
absolutely
that work. Thank you very much. Go ahead.
I'm not sure what all he touched on in his remarks, but I did just want to say that I support Des Moines Public Schools dropping the school resource officer program. I don't think it's necessary as police are proven not to have to respond to public threats and have been approved by the Supreme Court not to even have to protect the people that they serve in the city. They literally are not required by law to protect anybody. And so really the only thing they do is enforce the school to prison pipeline. And unfortunately, over police young students with disabilities, students who are Black and brown, students with accents, students who are children of immigrants. And so I believe that not having SROs and investing instead in counselors and student advocates would be beneficial to the education of our students. And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay, thank you. I know that you just hopped on, but we are having more conversations at the board level through some work sessions in the coming weeks. We had things planned, and then our return to learn has kind of failed to launch here. So we're going to take care of that immediate first, and then we will have those important conversations this fall because they are very important.
Sounds great. I'll tune in those that time as well. Excuse me.
Okay, thank you so much for being here this evening.
I'm so sorry. I have a
question. Do you have any further speakers?
I have a question about the conversations that you're planning to have on SROs.
I'm sorry. Typically, our public forum is not a time where we engage in back and forth conversations. I would love your questions, but we have a business meeting that we need to convene, and we're not, by law, we can't really go into in-depth conversations about things that aren't published in a public agenda. So while I really want to have this conversation, we just can't do it at this moment, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no. When can I ask questions? And also, when will this meeting be about the SROs? Because I know many members of the public would like to attend that.
Yes. So all of our meetings are published on our website in the same manner that this meeting was published for this evening. If you have specific questions, I would invite you to go ahead and email me, and you can find my email on the website under school board. And any questions that I can answer from a board perspective, or any questions you want the board to consider, we're happy to do that. If there are staff level questions about, the types of training that our officers receive, I know that Dr. Ahart and his team would be happy to get answers to those figured out for you as well. Does that make sense? I can only see your silhouette and not your face, Miranda, at this time. So
no, that's cool. I guess my just general question is, I have questions about more of the agenda items further along. Will my questions be answered, or will I just be kind of speaking into the air?
I'm sorry. There's some feedback. You have questions about items tonight?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
this is Terry Caldwell-Johnson. And we do have the balance of our business meeting we need to get through.
I know.
I think for individuals to engage you electronically via email, and I'd like for us to proceed with the balance of our meeting. We have a lot of business to get through.
We do. Okay, and that's what I was trying to get us to. Thank you, everyone, for your input this evening. I'll now close the public forum, and the regular board meeting will reconvene here momentarily.
Why they bring all that in anyway? Yeah, because they have to do a public forum, I guess. So what did they put something that? Is they going over it too? Well, they're going to tell us.
Okay, I couldn't get my mic unmuted. If everyone could please mute their mic who is currently on the line. We're hearing some conversation happening in your homes.
Oh, we have we have to swear somebody in.
We do.
Will they decide? Yeah.
Aaron, I think you're muted now too. All right. I would like to call the school board meeting for Monday, August 17th, 2020 for the Des Moines Public Schools to order. Please take the roll.
Stop. Hold on. Can you hear me?
We can, yes.
Okay, now it says I'm muted, so that's weird. All right. Sorry, Mr. Barron.
Here.
Miss Bradley.
Here.
Miss Caldwell-Johnson.
Here.
Mr. Cody.
Here.
Miss Della Gardell.
Here.
And Miss Sawyer.
Here.
I apologize. My board agenda disappeared and signed me out, and now I'm trying to get back in. But I do believe our first order of business is to swear in our new board member. Ms. Mortorano, are you here this evening? I believe you are. I just saw you a second ago. There you are.
I am here.
Okay. I have an oath that you will be taking this evening. Typically, we'll have you stand, but I'm going to have you sit. We're both going to sit so everyone can see us. If you will please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Iowa, and that you will faithfully and impartially, to the best of your ability, discharge the duties of the Office of Director in the Des Moines Independent School District as now or hereafter required by law?
I do.
Congratulations. You are now a duly appointed school board director. My agenda is still loading, but I believe we need to take the roll again. Is that correct, Ms. Jenkins?
Yes.
Thank you. If you could please call our roll.
Mr. Barron.
Here.
Ms. Bradley.
Here.
Ms. Johnson.
Here.
Cody.
Here.
Ms. Delagardelle.
Here.
Ms. Martorano.
Here.
And Ms. Sawyer.
Here.
Okay, so I want to welcome all members of our community to our board meeting. We thank guests and board members and participants in advance for keeping their microphones muted and until it is the appropriate time to speak. If you are interested in speaking to an agenda item, please let us know in the chat or contact Erin Jenkins at erin.jenkins@dmschools.org. The first order of business this evening is approval of the agenda. May I have a motion and a second to approve the agenda?
Caldwell Johnson, move approval.
Second.
Bradley, second.
Ms. Mortorano, did you have anything though that you needed to remove from the agenda?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to request that consent items C16 and C17 are removed from the agenda.
Okay, I believe it was Ms. Caldwell Johnson. Will you amend your motion to Ms. Mortorano's request?
Yes, I would amend the motion to approve the agenda, removing the two items delineated.
Okay, and then Ms. Bradley with your second, I think it was you. Will you second the new motion? Or Mr. Barron?
Second.
Okay, perfect. So we now have a motion by Caldwell Johnson, a second by Martorano to move items 16 and 17 to vote on independently. Ms. Jenkins, will you please call the vote for our amended agenda?
She's there. I can't hear her.
Ms. Jenkins, we cannot hear you. Okay, I will call the roll call vote. Ms. Bradley.
Yes.
Mr. Cody.
Yes.
I skipped over Mr. Barron. Mr. Barron.
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. Delagardelle is yes. Ms. Sawyer.
Yes.
Ms. Martorano.
Yes.
The vote is approved 7-0.
Madam Chair, this is Terry Caldwell Johnson. Until Aaron returns, I'd be happy to call roll.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Ms. Caldwell Johnson. The next item on our agenda is approval for our minutes for our last meeting on Tuesday, July 21st, I believe. May I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes?
This is Barron. I approve. I move approval.
A second, Cody.
All right, we have a motion by Mr. Barron and a second by Cody. Please call the roll call vote.
I am back on. Sorry, I had to join from my phone. My computer died.
Great. Thank you, Aaron.
Yes. Mr. Barron.
Yes.
Miss Bradley.
Yes.
Miss Caldwell Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Cody.
Yes.
Miss Delagardelle.
Yes.
Miss Martrano.
Yes.
Miss Sawyer.
Yes.
All right, motion passes 7-0. The next item on our agenda is the consent items. We allow any person the opportunity to speak to the board for up to 5 minutes following the presentation of an agenda item. If anyone wishes to speak to an agenda item, please email Erin Jenkins. Remarks must be germane to the agenda, and we ask that you avoid reference to personalities and character attacks, as those types of comments serve no productive purpose. We appreciate your input. As a reminder to the board and public, the board will not engage in discussion or deliberation with the speaker regarding comments made to agenda items. Discussion and deliberation will remain among board members at the board table, with speakers' comments informing said discussion, deliberation, and determination as deemed necessary. Mr. Cody, I believe you have the consent motion?
I do. I move that the board approve the consent items in accordance with the recommended action for each item on the consent agenda, including bills previously authorized, certified, and approved for payment by the board secretary in the amount of $22,328,604.59, and procurement card transactions in the amount of $733,073.19.
Is there a second?
Sawyer.
Second, Caldwell Johnson.
We have a motion by Cody and a second by Caldwell Johnson. Any discussion or questions, board members?
I do have one question. I apologize, I did not get it submitted prior to the meeting. But regarding the interim assessment line item C13, what grade levels will the new assessment be for? So I know MAP was one set, and I believe that this interim assessment is a different set of grades.
Dr. Ahart.
I apologize. I'm trying to get logged back into my Board Docs account. For some reason, I've lost that. So if you can just give me a moment.
I think Board Docs might be having some issues because I can't get any either.
Yeah, I don't seem to have any of my I don't really seem to have any content. It just keeps spinning and spinning.
Yeah, I don't have a specific answer to that on the top of my head.
Not a problem.
It generally replaces most of the grade levels where we had been using MAP, but it's not a 100% one-for-one exchange. But I fear giving an incorrect response if I take a guess at it without that in front of me.
Any other questions or discussion from board members? Okay, without any further discussion, please vote. Ms. Jenkins?
We do have a speaker. Okay.
Oh, we do have a speaker. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Nope, Ms. Jenkins,
no, that's
please,
fine.
Please call our speaker.
Yes.
Also, if I may
Mr.
interrupt,
Geyer.
Aaron.
Geyer. Oh, go ahead. Yes.
I apologize, but Aaron, if
You're
you
fine.
have an avenue to pursue a quick message to the board docs help, that might be useful to see if this is going to be an ongoing thing tonight or if this is just a temporary glitch.
Will do. I'll send that also.
Thanks. Sorry about that.
Yep. No, you're fine. Mr. Geyer, are you on, Al Geyer?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Wait,
yes.
He's not speaking to this agenda item.
Yeah, I was just saying.
He's speaking to 16.
Oh, sorry.
And you
Yeah, it
bumped
was for
that.
open.
Sorry.
Yeah, so it was for open enrollment, so I don't think it's this.
Okay. Yep. We'll call him in just a moment then. Can we please call the vote?
Yes, Mr. Barron.
Yes.
Miss Bradley.
Yes.
Miss Caldwell Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Cody.
Yes.
Miss Della Gardell.
Yes.
Miss Martorano.
Yes.
And Miss Sawyer.
Thumbs up.
Yeah, I see you. Thumbs up. Oh, perfect.
Okay. I will now take a motion and a second on our next agenda items, which were items 16 and 17 from the consent agenda.
Before we make a motion, are we taking those together or separately?
I think you could make a motion for whatever, for either of those, Rob. I don't see a reason if they were both pulled that we couldn't vote on them together, but if we want to vote on them separately, I mean, I would leave that up to my board colleagues and whoever would like to make a motion.
Okay, I'll move that the board approve items C16 and C17 that were pulled from the consent agenda.
Do we have a second?
Second, Caldwell Johnson.
We have a motion by Barron and a second by Cody. Ms. Jenkins, I believe we have speakers to this item.
Yes, Mr. Al Geyer, sorry.
So just for clarification, this is when I can talk about why I think my son should have open enrollment, right?
Yes. This is your time to talk to that agenda item.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Anyways, well, my name is Alec Geyer, father to Dominic Geyer, who was denied open enrollment to go back to Prairie City, where he was originally at for preschool, due to he has a speech impediment. So I think he deserves school choice because, like I said, he has a speech impediment, and he already knows the specialists there who have been working with him. He has trouble getting used to new people. He doesn't really do well in new environments. And we only moved away from Prairie City because for just nothing that we could have done ourselves. Like, we wanted to stay there, but where we were living just could not be lived in anymore. It would definitely set him back. It'll be detrimental in his learning if he has to go to a whole new school, meeting a whole new group of people. When my wife had filled out the form before, she had filled it out incorrectly when asked if he had a special education. She circled no, but she was supposed to have circled yes, because she didn't understand at the time until after we've already spoken with his speech therapist that it is a special needs program. She did not previously know that. So he was already enrolled there before, so I don't see any reason for him to have to start somewhere new, even though it's just kindergarten. And this is my first board meeting that I've been a part of, so thank you all for listening to me, and I hope everybody has a great rest of their day.
Thank you so much for discussing with us. Typically what will happen, regardless of what happens after a vote, is that someone will reach out to you regarding your open enrollment request. If you believe that an error was made on your application, they can help you through that process as well. Board members, do we have any further discussion or questions regarding this agenda item? Okay, hearing no further questions or discussion, please vote.
Mr. Barron.
Yes.
Miss Bradley.
Yes.
Miss Caldwell Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Cody.
Yes.
Miss Della Gardell.
Yes.
Miss Martirano.
I abstain.
Thank you. Miss Sawyer.
Yes.
All right, motion passes 6-0, one abstention. I do see that someone is asking about the agenda not working to access the meeting agenda tonight. Board members are also not able to access the agenda, Sarah. So I apologize for that. I know that we are working on trying to get a fix on that. The next item on our agenda is item D1, the management limitation 2.11 emergency COVID-19 pandemic language. May I have a motion and a second regarding this item?
Caldwell Johnson moves.
Second. Bradley.
We have a motion by Caldwell Johnson and a second by Bradley. I believe that I submitted this agenda item, and I know board members you have seen it, but the language here in this allows for, let me see if I can just pull it up on my files in my computer. It allows for several things. The first is that the board will be voting to approve our overall return to learn plan that was submitted to the Department of Education on July 1st, and that we will also be voting on the metrics that Dr. Ahart will use to determine, or at least it leaves provisions that Dr. Ahart will have to give the board metrics that he will use to move between the various stages of the plan, whether that's in-person, hybrid, virtual, or anywhere in there. In addition, it also makes sure that Dr. Ahart will have a plan for our ELL students, our students with IEPs and 504s, and any student who is 2 or more years behind in literacy or math in line with our goals. There was one other thing. Sorry, I'm trying to get it pulled up. Is there any questions or discussion, board colleagues, regarding the management limitation? Oh, to operate without professional development for our staff either for those. Mm-hmm. So what questions or discussion of board colleagues do you have regarding this?
So, Madam Chair, I do have a couple questions that I want to lift up. And I know, Dr. Ahart, you and I talked about this, and I informed you I was going to bring them forward. But my question is, with our management limitations, making sure that we are monitoring through progress measures, that we are specifically identifying when kids are falling behind. How is that going to be monitored? How are we going to get reports to know that there's going to be remedy to that? So I want to lift that up because I'm sorry, I'm getting feedback, but I'm not sure how you guys designed the goals and management limitations prior, because I was not in that process, but just want to be aware that we should be monitoring this, and I'm not sure what our monitoring schedule is going to be looking like, but making sure this does get on our monitoring calendar.
I'm sorry, Kelly, was that a question for me or for Dr. Ahart?
I think it was mainly for Dr. Ahart and staff, and I don't know that there are answers right now, and maybe it's part of a board discussion around how are we going to progress measure these management limitations, knowing they are also short. They're time limited, right? They're not, I mean, we know that there is potentially end date, right? That's guidance in there, but knowing that we have these management limitations, we can't just say we have them and then not monitor them. We have to be able to monitor them. And so what's that monitoring schedule going to look like? And what are those performance measures we are going to identify so we're monitoring them?
Yes.
Yeah, so I would just,
Oh, sorry, Tom. We have other policies that are like this that say operate without a plan for. So we have that for, I believe it is emergency succession. And so what Dr. Ahart and I had talked about when we were first putting this together was that basically as soon as the board if the board approves this evening, he is immediately out of compliance with this. And so then tomorrow we'll have a conversation about what it looks like to get him into compliance. And I imagine that will involve a work session, and whether that is Dr. Ahart submitting, and I'm sure you can talk about this here in just a second. I just wanted to fill in on process that whether that's, coming up with some KPIs that we will follow, or whether that really is just, you proposing when you'll be in compliance by submitting these plans. We can discuss that further. Go ahead, Dr. Ahart, about what you were thinking.
Yeah, thank you. So we're in the process and actually have been working on this without this new governance policy, just because we know that we're in a very different mode of operation, and this is an extremely atypical way for the district to be operating. But the values that the board has set out and our ultimate goals, especially as punctuated by the SMART goals, continue to sort of be our North Star. So we'll, as soon as this policy is approved, as our chair has just stated, we're going to be ready to workshop some proposed KPIs and monitoring strategies for the board. And certainly, that'll be a collaborative process, as it always is. But I think we're in really good stead in that regard. We just don't have something publicly facing to share at this point because we don't want to do that prematurely. But I feel pretty confident that we're in good shape in that regard.
Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion from board colleagues, please?
I just want to raise up, I think you did some good work in drafting these. I think these make sense. And they give us, I think, the right frame to work around. I know there's a lot of folks that are on this meeting that aren't typically on school board meetings, so I just want to make sure that folks know we govern through policy, and our policy lays out the goals that our district works towards, and then the basically the fences that they have to work within to meet those goals. But we don't have a policy that deals with a pandemic event or virtual learning for the entire district, and so it's kind of incumbent upon us to put out the expectations for the district to work within, and then to monitor those. And then we give the district any opportunity and any resource that they have within those fences to meet that goal. And so that's really what we're doing tonight is setting a policy to work around for the next couple of months, and then the district implements that policy. So I know there's some folks who have been asking about what's going on, why things work the way they work. I thought that might be helpful for them.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of what Mr. Barron just said, this is time constrained. So when we see a decline in total daily number of positive cases for 14 consecutive days, this policy will go away. As board members, or as a board, we can always re-implement this policy or any other emergency pandemic policy at any time. Also, the board does not typically approve operational plans for the district, such as a return to learn plan, but because of the unique situation we're in, both because of the pandemic and just in the context of our state, this was something that the board went ahead and started to work on. Any other questions or discussion from board colleagues?
Yeah, Madam Chair, just one quick thing, and I really appreciate the time and attention you and the superintendent have given to this. I think I was the one that sort of pushed pretty hard on feeling like we really needed to have a level of focus that was different than what we would typically be doing around monitoring, recognizing the different situation that we find ourselves in, and not feeling like I wanted to hold the superintendent's feet to the fire based on our old mode of monitoring, given sort of the unique situation that we're in. I think the other thing that's really important about this as well is we know that there are likely going to be a variety of different challenges that are going to be faced not only by our teachers, but also by our students. And by creating sort of this alternate monitoring, It also gives us an opportunity to not only recognize what we're faced with, but also to do some course corrections that allow us to, in real time, really be on top of something that we've not experienced before. But I thank everyone for their attention to this, and I really look forward to following up on Kelly's comment about sort of what metrics then we put in place moving forward. So thanks for your work.
Thank you. I work pretty closely with AJ Craybill on this, who works with us on a lot of things. And I told him this is my policy I've written pretty much by myself with help of Dwana. And as you all know, I got to shadow Cindy Ellsburn as her vice chair, and she just wrote policy, and I would look at it and be like, "Great job, Cindy." So I had a little bit of fun getting to write some policy of my own, even though that sounds really governance nerdy, and I apologize about that. But when you start to do this for a while, it does sort of kind of you get into it. So if there are no further questions or conversation, we can move forward with a vote. But if board members have other questions or conversation, I would entertain that now. I think that was the appropriate amount of virtual wait time. So Ms. Jenkins, if you could please call our roll call vote.
Mr. Barron.
Yes.
Ms. Bradley.
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Cody.
Yes.
Ms. Della Gardell.
Yes.
Ms. Martirano.
Yes.
And Ms. Sawyer.
Yes.
All right, motion passes 7-0. The next item on our agenda is item D2, the fiscal year 21 Return to Learn plan. Dr. Ahart, I will turn this over to you for introduction.
Okay. For some reason, my computer is slow in adopting the selections that I've made for mute or unmute. But at any rate, just to try to briefly cover the 5 months that our whole community has been suffering through with the pandemic. We did close our schools in the middle of March of which was about halfway through second semester of the 2019-20 school year, 2019-2020 school year. And we pushed really hard to get clarity from the state level on what the game plan would be for the remainder of the year. We eventually pushed ahead in an effort to get clarity so that we could focus resources on doing as best we could at connecting students virtually and continuing the school year despite having to be closed. And so we got that in place, and I want to thank my team for just some really creative and aggressive work in dealing with a heretofore unanticipated circumstance. We immediately turned around and started working on what was going to happen in August. And there slowly, starting in late May, we started receiving some indication from the state of what the sort of the rules of engagement would be. But we also felt a real urgency to get clarity to our community as soon as possible, because we knew that what would happen in the fall, whatever that was not going to be the same as what all of us have been used to for the last century, literally. So we followed guidance. We did a lot of independent research on what COVID was presenting to us and what impact it would have on us, and how it spreads, how it transmits, what's the best way to mitigate the negative impact of it, and so forth. And when we received the final, what at the time was communicated from the Department of Education as the final guidance toward the end of June, we felt that we had a plan that was in full compliance with state code. So we kind of put the finishing touches on that and communicated that to our community on July 1st. The July 4th holiday followed immediately afterward, and then we commenced to have a number of community meetings to, first of all, educate our community on what the plan consisted of and what the choices were, but also because we had still hundreds of decisions yet to make on how we would execute this, to get the full input of our community and how we answered those questions. Also, just as an aside, we did do some really aggressive polling of our community, and we really pressed on our families to respond to a survey, and we're able to achieve an 80% response rate, which is extraordinary. So the plan that we presented was an all virtual option, which still exists, and a hybrid option, which looked a lot like 2 days a week of in-person instruction and the remainder of the week as virtual instruction in our elementary schools and our middle schools, and then at the high schools, 1 day of in-person instruction at the comprehensive schools, and 1 day, if a student was enrolled at Central Campus, 1 day of in-person instruction at Central Campus. So we rolled that out. We communicated it. We met with our community, and then for the week following July 4th, and then we moved forward with our typical registration process, commencing on Monday, July 13th. On Friday, July 17th, after we had over 9,000 students registered, we received we received new and unanticipated rules from the governor and the Iowa Department of Education that stipulated that a hybrid, in other words, a mix of in-person and virtual instruction, would only be valid from the eyes of the state if 50% of the instruction or more happened in person. This came as a shock to us, and so I will say that we were reeling for a day or two, and we revisited our plans, which again we formed very much from the perspective of, number one, protecting the safety and well-being of our students, their families, our staff, and their families. We thought we had a good plan. It did follow the best guidance in terms of physical distancing, sanitation, etc. And as you work through the school system from the elementary level to middle school to high school, the challenges become exponentially more challenging. So we think if pressed, we could modify the elementary and possibly the middle school plans to come into the 50% minimum in-person instruction requirement. But at the high school level, it's really an impossibility unless we abandon any generally accepted physical distancing requirements put out by various organizations, the World Health Organization, the Center for Disease Control, etc. So we've been attempting to navigate that with the Department of Education. In the meantime, we've received additional guidance after July 17th, on July 30th, which articulated the metrics that the state will be using to grant permission to conduct instruction in a full-time virtual mode. And then again, and I may be missing one in here, I think there was another set of guidance, but then we received additional guidance this past Friday. The long and short of it is we've engaged with the governor's office, we've engaged with the Department of Education on a number of occasions. In the meantime, conditions in Polk County have been, by most experts' determinations, not suitable for successful and safe full in-person instruction, and in fact, not even any in-person instruction. So the plan that I'm proposing to the board this evening is essentially a fully virtual return to learn beginning on September 8th, now, since the new calendar was approved, with a few notable exceptions. Our program at Orchard Place, which is, as our board understands, is a residential program, that instruction for somewhere between 72 to 80 students will be full-time in person. The concurrent enrollment courses that we provide in partnership with DMAC and some other community colleges at Central Campus, which do require, in order to be credit bearing, a certain number of in-person lab hours, we will be providing those classes in person in a physically distanced setting at Central Campus. And then we will also have a number of students, and this is really made on an individual student by individual student basis. We'll have a number of students who are being served in person for a portion or the full day based on their revised individual education plans. And we did bring most of our special education leadership staff back on contract early this fall so that we could resume revisiting each of those IEPs under these new conditions and determine who really does need to have in-person, in-person without the intervention of a computer connection to successfully progress with their education. So although it's not 100% virtual, it's largely 100% virtual that I'm recommending. The second piece of that, and we're not discussing these tonight, but we will have a set of metrics that are well vetted by some of the best renowned epidemiologists and public health experts in the country that will guide our reentry into hybrid and then fully in-person instruction as we move throughout the year, responding to the best data that we can get a hold of that shows us what the conditions are that we're dealing with in Polk County. We are primarily an educational institution, and that's what we feel our core mission is, but we're never going to pursue that at the expense of the health and safety of the staff that are making that happen, and certainly not the students and their families that support them. I'll also note for the many people who are on this meeting who haven't perhaps heard this before, when Des Moines Public Schools is fully open for business, as we were for most of the year last year, there are over 40,000 people entering and exiting our school buildings over the course of a single day. Over 70% of our professional staff does not reside within Des Moines. So those folks who are largely interfacing with our students on a day-to-day basis are returning home to their communities. And when we're operating amidst a pandemic, we're spreading whatever exposure happens within the district out to the surrounding suburbs and in many cases beyond. And then whatever exposures happen with our DMPS staff in those other communities then comes back into the walls of DMPS the following day. So we do feel an especial responsibility to the general well-being of the greater Des Moines area by how we operate. So that's in a truncated form, the plan that I'm proposing for our return to learn plan, which would now begin with students on Tuesday, September 8th.
Thank you for introducing the item, Dr. Ahart. Before I open up, I think I need to have do we have any speakers to this item? Is that first and then I take a motion? Yes. Do we have any speakers to this item, Ms. Jenkins?
We do. Tracy Stevens.
Also, as a brief moment, if you are not a speaker or a board member, could you please turn off your video just so that board members can see each other? It's a little bit difficult for us, I think, when we can't see each other. So if you could just turn off your video if you're not a board member, and then if you're speaking, you can turn your video back on when it's time for you to speak. That'll just help us all see each other. Thank you. Go ahead.
Tracy Stevens, are you on? If not, Tracy. Javier Gonzalez.
I'm here.
Sorry, I'm here. Okay.
She can go ahead.
Okay, Tracy first, please.
Okay, sorry, I muted myself. Forgot to unmute it. My name is Tracy Stevens. I live at 433 East Jackson, and my son, he goes to McKinley Elementary. I want to talk today about the special needs kids. To try and sit with my son, he's 7 years old, and to try to sit with him and try to get him to learn at home is virtually impossible. When he sees a laptop, he wants to just look at himself on a video. We say no, he will bust the computer. And I myself can't afford to keep, paying for computers. What my son needs is to be in class full time, at least 4 days a week. He is regressing ever since all of this. He's had no education since school stopped. And he won't have it if he has to stay home. I just really need for my child to get into school. He can become so violent. He's become very violent since school's been out because he doesn't have that stability of, going to school. He has his schedule. His teacher is very, very good with him, and he needs to be around that people in his class because that is all he ever sees. He doesn't like to go anywhere. He doesn't like to be around any other people. So he needs that for himself. Peyton, he's regressed some. We can tell just by how he is. So, I think my biggest thing is just making sure that the special needs kids, and especially, my son, when there's only 5 kids in his class, that they get back into school, and not just for a half a day here, half a day there, because 2 days a week, that's nothing. That's still him not learning anything. He needs to go 4 days a week. He needs to be in there. And I understand with the pandemic and everything, but with 5 kids in his class and there's usually 1 teacher and 1 aide, then, I don't have a problem with it. And we were really concerned, and we were just going to hold him back a year, but he's got to be in school. There's just no way around it because he's regressing and he needs that stability because at home, it's virtually impossible to have the stability with our child. So yeah, that was my biggest point, was just to make sure that, you guys really think about this with these special needs kids who have lost so much. They have IEPs and it violates their rights. They're not getting an education. So I please vote to have these, special needs kids in school learning like they need to be. And that was all I really had to say.
Thank you for your comments this evening. Ms. Jenkins, do we have additional speakers?
Yes, Javier Gonzalez.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. School board members, my name is Javier Gonzalez. I live at 1212 57th Street in Des Moines. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak to you tonight. My wife and I are proud parents of a junior at Roosevelt High School. Go Riders. I am here to encourage the school board to continue to keep putting the health and safety of our children ahead of politics. I support DMPS's efforts to delay the start of the school year until Labor Day, and I also support any effort to do as much virtual learning as possible. I understand the board is under tremendous amount of political pressure to adhere to the governor's mandates. Governor Reynolds wants schools to fully open their doors. She has even threatened our children's grades if districts are in non-compliance. Under Governor Reynolds' criteria, the county or school district has to have a positivity rate of more than 15% in order to close and go fully virtual. As of Friday morning, Polk County had a positivity rate of 11.66% and a case fatality rate of 2.53. This isn't the flu, which has a fatality rate of about around 1%. I understand our children need to socialize with their friends. It is a big, important part of their overall well-being. If we send 32,500 students back to the classroom, along with hundreds of teachers and staff, we will have a public health crisis within 2 weeks of our opening our doors. We know this is going to happen because it already has. More than 97% of children tested positive for COVID in the last 2 weeks of July. We have seen outbreaks in schools already in Texas, Indiana, Georgia, and others. Kids are not immune. My wife and I have no immediate family near us. If heaven forbid our child brings home this deadly virus, and in the worst case scenario we are incapacitated, our child would have to move to Texas, another hotspot, to stay with family. In fact, his designated guardian, his older sister, is herself fighting COVID right now. My daughter has been sick for almost a month. I live with the thought that she may have to go to the ER, and my wife and I are unable to be with her. My heart skips with every text alert or phone ring. I am already worried, sick over one child 800 miles away. My wife and I do not need another burden to bear. In closing, I want to thank you for your time, and to let you know that I'm just a concerned father looking out for his child. Thank you.
Thank you for speaking with us tonight, Mr. Gonzalez. Ms. Jenkins, will you please call our next speaker?
Jason Hahn.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, good. Thanks, and thanks for allowing me the opportunity to speak. As I said, my name is Jason Hahn. I am the father of 3 girls who currently attend Des Moines Public Schools. As the previous speaker indicated, this has become a highly politicized issue. So I will just state for the record, I am not a Republican. I detest Donald Trump, and I am not a fan of Kim Reynolds. With that said, I am here tonight to speak about the district's return to learn plan as proposed by the superintendent. In that regard, I ask the vote to consider voting against the recommendation for 100% virtual return to learn plan, and instead to guide the superintendent to implement a plan that has at least 50% in-person instruction. The rationale for my position is twofold. First, there is a likelihood that the 100% virtual plan is illegal. If adopted, this in turn could result in the district students not receiving credit for this year's learning activities and effectively require students to repeat all or a portion of the school year. Think of the kindergartner who could have to effectively start their educational process over. Think of the high school senior who could potentially not graduate and begin college. A prior speaker also referenced the unique challenges of special needs students. I think given these incredibly real risks and the associated catastrophic outcomes, besides being illegal, adopting the proposed plan in the face of these realities is irresponsible. Second, and perhaps more important, is my concern that the quality and academic rigor surrounding a 100% virtual environment is unlikely to meet even the lowest expectations that we have for our educational system. At the end of the last school year, my wife and I had the opportunity to observe the district's online instruction. To be charitable, the content and quality were poor. Moving forward, I think it is possible, perhaps even likely, that some improvements will be made in the quality of virtual instruction for the coming school year. However, in my mind, it is difficult to believe that these improvements will deliver anywhere near the quality of instruction that our students deserve. It will also place the least fortunate among us at the greatest risk. Think of an elementary student whose parents work outside the home and cannot directly supervise their students' learning. Now, imagine that child sitting alone, staring at a computer, and trying to read or perform arithmetic for the first time. The statistics regarding students who do not perform at grade level by the end of elementary school are not favorable and indicate minimal chances of academic recovery. Simply put, adopting a 100% virtual plan would place the least fortunate among us at even greater academic risk, and to a very real extent, doom a certain percentage of them to a lifetime of hardship beyond what they are already facing. While Superintendent Ahart initially proposed a hybrid model, he now indicates this is not possible to implement. This position, in my mind, does not seem supported by fact and is contradicted by the fact that many, if not all, of the surrounding school districts have indeed adopted hybrid models. Many of the board members have backgrounds in education, and I believe one, perhaps previously two, even teach in districts where hybrid learning models have been implemented. As such, they know what is possible. I acknowledge the scary statistics that have been brought forward by some regarding the potential expansion of the virus upon return to learning. However, there are positive statistics. A recent study released by the University of Dresden for students and teachers in Saxony, Germany, found that when using proper social distancing techniques, only minimal rates of infection were observed, 12 out of 2,000 students, or 0.6%. And that was as they returned to school over the May to June timeframe. The study's author indicate that children might even act as a brake on infection levels. There is also positive, if non-comprehensive and non-scientific data reported by NPR regarding daycare infection rates at the YMCA locations throughout the United States. To conclude, I believe that a 100% virtual model will represent us failing our students, and I strongly urge the board to reject the superintendent's proposal for a virtual model and instead to direct him to implement a hybrid model with at least 50% in-person instruction. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to take your feedback or answer any questions you have regarding my request.
Thank you, Mr. Hahn, for being here this evening and speaking with us. I think actually your comments might better align with our next topic, so we'll keep those in mind when we go to looking at Dr. Ahart's waiver request. So thank you very much for being here this evening. Ms. Jenkins, please call our next speaker.
Sarah Kiefer.
Yes, it's Sarah Kiefer. Hello, good evening. My name is Sarah Kiefer. I am the mother of 6 children entering into your school system this year. We live at 2901 2nd Avenue. We all currently are enrolled for Findlay. I have 4 children that have been going there for 3 years, and it is a wonderful school system. I wanted to take a moment today and just kind of briefly touch on a couple of things that have already been talked about. As I stated, I am the mother of 6 children entering the school system this year. Specifically, 2 things I wanted to bring to your guys' attention is one, I have an 8-year-old autistic son. His name is Nick. When we went to Findlay, he was nonverbal and struggled very much. Findlay has brought him out of his shell, and the teachers and the curriculum, all of the people that work at Findlay have really helped him a lot. When we had to end last year, we attempted to learn online, engaging him with his therapies, OT, ADA, and speech therapy, and also tried very hard to stick by his IEP. Unfortunately, it did not work at all. His brain is very segregated in the fact that home is home and school is school. So unfortunately, we had to give up the rest of the school year for him, which really saddened me immensely. As was transferred through the school system at Findlay and we found the right amount of help for him and got him the right tools, he really began to flourish. We gave up the school year with my son. When we ended the school year, last year, my son, who was in 2nd grade, was doing 4th and 5th grade math and was reading at a 6th or 7th grade level. He didn't have the comprehension, unfortunately. His autism kind of helped, it hinders his comprehension levels, but he could read the words. Over the last several months, I have watched him decline in speech, social, pretty much in every aspect of his life. He can barely read Dr. Seuss books right now, even though I've worked hard to try and keep him engaged. He's also barely doing basic mathematics for his grade right now. It is heartbreaking to see as his mother and watch him regress so viciously and so quickly. Without the tools that his workers and his paraprofessionals and the wonderful school that he is currently enrolled in, he will continue to regress. And this breaks my heart because I don't know what the future will hold for him if everything is online and he is tried to force to conform to what works for most neurotypical children. We are back to using sign language again. And so I just urge you that his return to learn cannot be online. So his school did agree to entertain the idea that he could go all 4 days. As you guys mentioned in the beginning of this part of the discussion, there were 2 major issues with that. One was there is currently at this point the possibility of no in-person instruction at all, which is scary. But secondly, Monday and Tuesdays would be repeated Thursday and Friday. So basically, it would just be him going to the same classes again and again each week. I mean, so he would be repeating the classes. In the beginning of the school year, because of his regression, this probably would not be an issue. However, when he gets back into the role of things, if we do in-person learning, he'll become bored very quickly. And then we have behavior issues that we have to look at. If he is in a class of 10 children and he becomes bored, he will also take away the educational experience of the children where it is not a repeat. So I want to make it very clear that I am not trying to be, I do not think that my children deserve any more than the next child, but we have to be very careful that we are addressing those kinds of issues, because if my child is causing someone else's child to not get an educational experience that they deserve and that they so desperately need, then we really are failing everyone in general. I know that everyone is scared right now and that everyone has the right to protect themselves.
30
however,
seconds.
no life is more important than the other. Teachers are essential workers, just like I'm an essential worker. I had to quit my day job so that I could prepare to teach my 5 neurotypical children. So I would just urge the school board to consider allowing families to make the choices for themselves. If I want to send my children to school, I should be able to do that. And I think that everyone should be able to have that choice. I do want to thank you guys for your time today, and I appreciate you allowing me to voice my opinion. Have a great day. Thank you very much.
Thank you for speaking with us this evening. Ms. Jenkins, can you please call our next speaker?
Crystal Loving. Crystal Loving, are you on? All right. Latricia Foster. So go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
This is Crystal Loving. Thank you. My name is Crystal Loving. I have 2 students in the district, one that will start middle school this fall and another that's in elementary. I just want to take the time to thank the district and the board for their continued efforts and hard work finding the safest way to get students learning, playing sports, celebrating milestones, and keeping community. The last 5 months have been nothing like any of us have experienced, and we have lacked true leadership and clear messaging from high-level elected officials. I appreciate that the district has sought guidance of medical experts and considered the health status of not only students, but also teachers and staff. When COVID hits a family, it may be uneventful, but can also be painful and for some tragic. I have yet to meet a parent or family who is willing to be the acceptable risk or the accepted case for in-person learning. The whole situation is terrible. Learning time is lost, social and mental struggles. There are few, if any, silver linings to the current situation. Somebody suffers no matter how this continues. I respect that the district and board are trying to make the best decision and believe they are the best group to make that decision. As a parent, I am sad for my kids. I'm sad for so many kids across the district. It's truly unfortunate the state and federal government continues to use students as pawns, either for in-class learning or by limiting their extracurricular activities. It's unfortunate the Board of Education thinks that sports with a small number of students is the same as 33,000 students returning to the classroom, hybrid or not, in the district. Virtual learning significantly reduces the risk to students and staff, and while some real risks still exist with sports, the analogy that those two are the same is ridiculous. I encourage all parents and staff to reach out to their legislators and governor at the State House to give their stories, to tell them to allow our board and district leadership to make the best decisions for Des Moines Public School students and staff. We already entrust them with our kids' education and well-being when they are at school. I do the same for selecting the best form of learning for our students at this time. I also ask families to stay engaged with legislative priorities of the district as our advocacy for funding and meeting the needs of students will continue into the new school year and our next legislative session. Again, I thank the board for all your time, energy, and effort to keep the district safe and support the virtual return to learn plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much for taking the time to speak this evening. Ms. Jenkins, can you call our next speaker?
Latricia Foster.
Hi. Can you hear me? Okay. I am a single mom of a 4th grader, a 2nd grader, and a 2-year-old. I don't feel like a virtual learning plan would give my children the adequate education that they need. As a single mom, I have to work full time. Right now, I feel like with 100% virtual learning, I'm having to choose between going to work and keeping a roof and food over my kid's head, or losing everything by quitting so that they are able to do their online learning, because it is impossible for me to get home at 6 o'clock at night, make them dinner, eat, have them bathe, do their schoolwork, and get in bed by 8. It's not, I don't feel like it's a feasible option for single parents like myself. I feel like college kids are able to go back. I live right up down the street from Drake. I've been watching them move into the dorms every day when I come home from work. College kids are able to go back, but our students aren't. When the positivity rate is higher for college students, and the Iowa Department of Public Health already said that younger children are less likely to get it, and they're less likely to spread the virus. When you look at Iowa as a whole, 54,000 people in Iowa have tested positive for it. Only 2,900 of them were ages 0 to 17. I don't like that it's not broke out more on the age groups, but I do feel like there's a low enough number that the kids should be able to return to class. I do believe the governor said that it is the parents' option to be able to keep their children home if they would like to do the online learning. So I feel like the option should be online learning or in-person learning, because I know for me, it is not possible for my kids to do online learning at all. I'm also concerned about their mental health. They've been stuck in the house for 5 months now. They haven't been able to do anything. So we're going to keep them in the house longer by doing online learning. And then if what the governor said is true on this not counting because we're not meeting state guidelines, that means that they're going to go into next summer having to do schoolwork. So then they're not going to have the summer either. They're going to be stuck in the house all winter and then having to do school in the summer. And so I don't think it's beneficial for kids to do online learning for their mental or educational purposes. I don't feel like it is feasible. And I just want to thank you guys for your time and listening to me today.
Thank you, Ms. Foster, for taking the time to come to our meeting and to talk with us this evening. Ms. Jenkins, do we have any further speakers tonight?
No others have signed up that I have.
Okay. I believe I need to open this up for a motion in a second before we begin our discussion. So board colleagues, I would entertain a motion.
Cody, so moved.
Okay.
Sawyer, second.
All right. And thank you. We have a motion by Cody and a second by Sawyer. I would like to remind everyone, because I believe many of our comments are actually more addressed to our next item, which is filling out a waiver to go 100% virtual. This really is just to approve the overall Return to Learn plan, which has 3 options in it. It is fully in-person, hybrid, which, there are a few different ways of hybrid, and ours specifically is outlined in that plan, and then fully virtual. Dr. Ahart, the other thing that I want to raise up is that the board just approved a policy that would require you to come forward with some metrics of how we would move in and between each of those stages. But we know that this year will be fluid, and that even if we would start the year in a particular way, that doesn't mean that that's how we would end or where we might be in 6 weeks. Can you address that just a little bit more to start us off? I just want to make sure that everybody listening has some context here of what we're actually voting on, and it's really just the plan, right?
Right. It is just the plan. We do have metrics that are very well grounded in public health and epidemiological science, and I'm getting those vetted. We're looking at the primary difference between what I'm going to be proposing to the board very soon here and what the state has in place is more than one metric. Number one. Which we think is very important to have a richer understanding of what our current context is, and secondly, taking into account not just student absenteeism, but also the impact of COVID-19 on staff as well. It is important to have our students in our care, but it's equally important to have our students in the care of well-qualified professionals. So we think it's a bit more complex than what the state has lined out here, but I'm really confident that we're going to have a set of metrics that are at least nation leading and that the board can get fully behind. And as soon as we have those, I am getting that vetted by some very high level national and world level experts. I will vet those also with the board, and then we can make those public in the very near future. But our goal, and I want to emphasize this, and probably didn't hit this hard enough earlier in the meeting, there is nobody who wants our students in school full time more than our teachers and our building leadership and myself and my team. And I'm certainly seeing the negative impact, especially from a social emotional perspective with my own 9-year-old son. We also know that there's burgeoning research that talks to, well documented now, even though this is a new disease, that there are long-term health impacts on individuals that contract the virus and recover from the virus. So it's not just about staying out of the hospital. There are long-term health impacts beyond contraction and recovery. And there's a growing body of research because remember, since March, largely our students have been in large part around the country, in effect, isolated or quarantined. And since Memorial Day, and then especially since July 4th, young people, K-12 aged students around the country have been more and more exposed to the general public. And since the middle of July, there's been a 90% increase in diagnoses of school-aged individuals. Also frightening is that, and this is comparable among all of the age groups, that of every 3 children that get hospitalized for COVID-19, one of them ends up in the ICU, and that comports with what happens in virtually all of the other age ranges. So I just want to remind our community that this disease was in very isolated parts of the world sort of discovered at the end of 2019, and we were little aware of COVID-19 in our country, with a few exceptions, until late February, early March. We're now in the middle of August. So, the disease itself is only about 7 or 8 months old, and there's still a lot to be learned, and we are learning a lot about it. I certainly know a lot more about it than I did 5 months ago. But I don't think it's fair to say that the impact of COVID-19 is less acute in our younger people until we have further evidence that is the case. And certainly in Des Moines, as I know our board already knows, but I'll just share this with our larger audience, that we have over 30% of our staff that have a pre-existing condition that puts them at high risk of the negative impact of COVID-19, and that's not accounting for the natural vulnerability that we have based on age. So we also have a large number of our staff that are 50 and older, and a large number that are 60 years of age and older. So even if you don't have a pre-existing health condition, your age actually puts you at higher risk of the very negative consequences that can be a result of COVID-19 infection. So the students are absolutely the focus of our conversations, but we can't think of them in isolation of the 5,000 staff that serve them day in and day out, and we certainly can't we can't negate the impact that whatever exposure our students encounter gets brought back to their home, and so they expose their siblings, their parents, and in many cases multi-generation family members with whom they reside. So it's I know that in this soundbite culture that we're living in, little snippets and little sound bites and little bits of easily communicated information are tossed around an awful lot, but it's a more complex issue than that, and we're taking that very seriously. So we understand that the situation is fluid. and we are staying up to date with the best research that's available. And we're also paying very close attention to the actual conditions in Polk County, not just those that are immediately reported that whose validity has certainly been questioned. So I know that's a very long answer. I just want everyone to understand that we were the first district in the state to have any meaningful reaction to this virus, and it's because we've been doing our homework. We continue to pay attention. I know the board has stayed extremely well informed and has had their own personal experiences with infection, either personally or with direct family members. And there are, districts around us that are opening up with full, 5 days a week instruction and some with hybrid. And I also know that some of them are seriously questioning, given the current conditions in Polk County, whether that's the right move forward. So I want to assure everyone that we're taking this very seriously, and all of us, including our board, want our students back in our physical, in real time, in real space care. And we will strive to do that as soon as it is realistically safe to do so.
Thank you, Dr. Ahart. I think it's really hard to talk about this plan without also talking about the conditions under which it was created and exists in the way that we think about it. But if board members have questions or discussion about the plan, the 3 levels of the plan that were submitted on July 1, I think now would be the time for that. If you have questions about, the conditions under which we'd go to virtual, I think we should save those till the next agenda item. But I would open for any questions or discussion on item D2, which is our return to learn plan.
Yeah, Tom, I do have one question. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about the difficulty in the high school hybrid plan as it used to exist versus the new guidance.
Yeah, that's a great question, and we went round and round and round with this as a team literally from April through June, and then once the guidance changed about midway through July, I had an extensive conversation with Dr. Lebo from the Department of Education, as well as 2 of her staff members, and then was it last week? I think it was last week or the week before, Mr. Barron and Ms. Delagardelle joined a meeting with myself and some of my team members in discussing with Amy Williamson, a bureau chief at the Department of Education, as well as 2 other staff members, walking through this challenge. So what happens in K-12 education is that the complexity of the system grows exponentially as you matriculate up through the system, and it gets very acute at the high school level for a few reasons. Number one is high school is the first level where students earn credit. So we have to be very specific about what courses students are enrolled in and ensure that over the course of their 4 years in high school, they have the appropriate number of credits in the appropriate categories, including some specific classes that need to be successfully passed before they can graduate. Another complicating factor at the high school level is that almost all of our classes can be taken by students in all 4 grade levels. So whereas middle school, almost all of our students are taking a class specific to their grade level, and in elementary, it's much simpler. At the high school level, you can have sections of classes that are that have enrolled in them in one section: freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. Additionally, at the high school level, accreditation of teachers becomes a more particular issue. So we talk about social studies teachers, for instance. Well, there are 5 different licenses for social studies teachers in the state of Iowa. So because you are a licensed social studies teacher does not mean that you can teach the entire social studies curricula in your school. Science is another great example where there are a number of different certifications that you must hold to teach all of the courses. So not all of our science teachers can teach all of the science courses that we have. And then there's the issue of concurrent enrollment. So we have courses that are offered to our high school students that actually earn them college credit if they complete them, and there are certification and seat time requirements for those as well. So it becomes a very complicated mix of certification and accreditation issues that we have to navigate, in addition to students being able to take a much wider array of curricula. On top of that, in Des Moines, and this isn't unique to Des Moines, but in Des Moines, this is certainly the case, that all of our high schools are operating virtually at capacity. In other words, we're serving as many students as we can in our physical buildings. So there's not extra space available to create additional flexibility in terms of lowering class size or offering additional sections of courses for those heavily registered for courses. So when you boil all of that down, what we discovered is, and I'll walk you through just an example. So let's take one class. Let's take first period class on any given day, and let's say it's algebra. Because that's a core course. Of our core courses, the courses that almost all of our students need to take through their 4 years to graduate, we'll have typically 30 to 35 students in that classroom for those core courses. So we had about 30% of our students select an all virtual mode of instruction. So let's say we take and let's round it down to 30 students. So if we had 30 students typically in a class size, and that's assuming, with this new mode that the difference between in-person and virtual is evenly spread among buildings and around the district, a typical class of 30 that Mr. Cody might be assigned as an algebra teacher then becomes a class of 21. We, depending on the classroom that we're using, because our classrooms, we have buildings that were built over the course of a century, and so different standards were in place, and different intended uses of each individual space were in place. So most of our classrooms will accommodate, with a reasonable modicum of physical distancing, 8 to 9 students. So we take the original class of 30. We shrink that to 21. So we have a teacher in a classroom. If we're going to socially distance meaningfully, they can serve 8 or 9 students. So we could take the remainder of the students and place them in a different classroom, or 2 classrooms probably, and have those students in front of their computer learning virtually from that same teacher that we referred to in the first example, and learning virtually. That means we need 2 to 3 times as much space, and we also need an adult in each of those rooms. So we need 2 to 3 times the number of adults providing supervision and hopefully some instructional coaching. We don't have the capacity to double or triple the amount of space that we have available on any given day, or double or triple the amount of staff that we have in place on any given day. So we did try to create a hybrid model that looks a lot like our elementary and middle school model at the high school, and it's not mathematically possible. So to meet the 50% requirement of in-person instruction, really the most logical thing for us to do, given our staff and space limitations, would just be to say we're going to resume the 5-day-a-week in-person instruction, social distance as effectively as we can, physically distance rather, as effectively as we can, but certainly we could not guarantee anywhere near 6 feet distancing. So that's one piece. The second piece is, the more students you have in the building, the bigger challenge you have in transition periods, between classes, when students are not in the classroom and are transitioning from one classroom to another on the same floor, or having to go up and down a staircase to access a classroom on another floor. It exacerbates the challenges we have with transportation, which is the one piece in our initially proposed hybrid model where we said we cannot effectively guarantee an adequate level of physical distancing. So we've actively asked families at the time of registration that if they qualify for transportation, will they voluntarily agree to provide their own transportation so that we can do a better job of physical distancing on the bus. So I'm not sure if that completely gets to it. It would take a long time to get all the way through it, but there's a wide range of courses that we offer. Each of those courses requires a teacher with a specific certification, and each of those virtually all of those courses allow students at all 4 grade levels to enroll. And so it just becomes a mathematical equation that's not solvable.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, even if that's just part of the problem, that illustrates really well how challenging this all is, just to make the pieces even jam together to fit a little bit.
Yeah, I would also point out in the FAQ that we received late in the morning on Friday, there were some questions asked that actually reflected some of the discussion that the board and I had with Dr. Osterholm about a week and a half ago. One of those was the question about if there's a case of COVID-19 in a classroom, who in that classroom would need to go into quarantine because of exposure. And I believe, Kaylin, you had asked specifically, and you actually asked a follow-up clarifying question, would the entire class have to be quarantined, or would it be just anyone who had been within 6 feet for 15 consecutive minutes? And initially, Dr. Osterholm said it would just be those that had been in exposure for 15 minutes. You clarified, does that mean 15 consecutive minutes, or does that mean 15 minutes total? And he said, oh, yeah, it would be 15 minutes total. It would be in the entire classroom. The new guidance that we received on Friday indicates just the opposite, that we would only quarantine those who had been in had within 6 feet, 15 consecutive minutes of exposure. So we have a number of places where it appears as though what we think is the best science is not necessarily reflected in the guidance that we're receiving from the state. So that further complicates the issue, and certainly is confounding to our community, where they're receiving very mixed messages from a variety of sources.
So
Kelly, yep, go ahead, Ms. Sawyer.
Okay, thank you. So, Tom, just a quick question. I apologize for not lifting this up and not catching this before, but what is going to happen with the pre-K, preschool for kids, and especially with those community partners? Are we? And I'm sorry, I didn't catch this and ask this question before.
Yeah, and we have not talked. Excuse me. We've not talked a lot about pre-K, but we largely the plan for pre-K would look very much like it does for elementary school. So we will be providing devices for pre-K. We will be providing in-person instruction for those that for those students that we identify as not being able to successfully navigate a virtual environment. That's a painful topic, because while some folks this evening have talked about the evidence that students are not as vulnerable to the virus, we know that there's a growing body of evidence that they're more vulnerable than we thought 2-3 months ago. And there's certainly clear evidence that the younger students, 10 years and younger, carry a higher viral load in terms of being a spreader than do the older students. So we're very cognizant of that. So we have a lot to work through with pre-K, and certainly we've fielded a lot of questions from families that are, considering delaying enrolling in pre-K until there's going to be a more typical experience, and we certainly understand that, but we don't think that the science would dictate that there's a significantly different approach to educating our 4-year-old preschool students than there would be for a kindergarten or first grade student.
So just a clarifying question. If we have a community partner, and I apologize, I've got a dog barking, but if we have a community partner that, they're a child care center and they happen to also have a pre-K classroom and they're opening up their child care center, would that be maybe an exception that they would continue with pre-K in
Absolutely.
that classroom? Okay.
Yes, for sure. And another thing that we're attempting to do, and this has been very difficult because, as the board is more than well aware, decisions on return to learn have continually been delayed because we've taken a step back when we've received new guidance. But we're continually, and I actually had a meeting late this afternoon on this very topic. We're continually trying to reassess where the needs are in our community, not just in terms of the pre-K, but for all of our families in regards to daycare, and what spaces will we have available in our schools to open for daycare possibilities, whether it's our staff providing that or one of our community partners. So we do have over 9 partners, including, I guess, 8 partners, plus DMPS providing daycare opportunities throughout the day. And we're actively trying to solicit from a broader range of the community, and that'll become more clear once we have a concrete response to what the return to learn plan is going to be, where the need is. So we're standing at the ready to provide more and more opportunities. And one of our speakers tonight, Ms. Foster, I believe, I think we can go a long way toward meeting the needs that she expressed, which we're absolutely sympathetic toward. As I said before, we want all of our kids back with us, and we certainly understand that our families are suffering the brunt of the negative impact of COVID, whether it's a direct infection or just the impact financially and social emotionally that all of us are suffering through. So we're going to continue to reach out to our families, and I think that families will know better what they need once they understand what the final decision is of the board. And while I'm sure we can't meet every single particular need, we're working like the Dickens in collaboration with a wide range of community partners to make sure that we have availability for daycare and a combination of daycare and instruction as our families require, and doing that in a safe, socially distanced manner. And food service, of course, I should have mentioned too. There was some question as to whether we would be able to offer the food and nutrition program if we were offering a program that wasn't immediately approved by the state. And all indications are that we will be able to continue to provide our food and nutrition services. So all of our families, even those that self-selected fully virtual, will have access to meals, breakfast, lunch, and then weekend meals as we move through the year. So that hadn't been lifted up yet, so I just wanted to tap that before we got too far down the road.
Thank you. That's all I have for questions.
Other board colleagues, Ms. Martirano?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I am curious, you had mentioned in a 100% virtual environment that the 3 outliers are going to be Orchard Place, concurrent enrollments, and then our students with IEPs. In previous conversations, you mentioned students with 504 plans, EL students, potentially students with that were 2 years behind academically. Is that still the case and just not mentioned in the current?
Yes, I apologize, Ms. Martirano. Yes, so I glossed over that. So IEPs is first priority for legal reasons, and included in that, even though technically it isn't, special ed is 504 plans. ELL, we have active plans for providing in-person services for those ELL families, especially the emergent learners, and we're actively working on that. The when we talk about, and we don't have this ready yet, but when we talk about the phase-in plan, when conditions allow, the first priority will be those students who are 2 or more years behind, especially at the elementary level. So the initial thought is that our tiered reentry plan, I hate that term, but I think it's appropriate, a reentry plan for physical learning will prioritize those 2 or more years behind and elementary. So it won't probably, the plan that we're considering isn't tiered just by grade level, but it's by grade level as well as some at-risk indicators, primarily the academic performance as compared with our board goals.
Other board colleagues, Mr. Barron, I think you were trying to.
Yes, thank you. Dr. Ahara, you and I have had a couple conversations about special education, and I appreciate those students getting good attention in this conversation. I'm aware from conversations with some parents that IEP meetings are happening right now. I just want to, and I don't know if the earlier speaker has had her IEP meeting yet or not, but with things somewhat unsettled, and it's worth considering whether those are happening too soon. And it's weird for me to be raising this because I was worried in late June that we weren't talking to our families soon enough. But I just want to make sure that families are getting the full information and that the folks that are leading those IEP meetings are briefed enough on what you're talking about. Because I mean, we've talked about transportation too, which would be another possible opportunity for us to be supportive of those families, given that we would be transporting a lot fewer students on a daily basis. So I just want to raise whether we're going out to families with those IEP meetings right now with the best possible information, or if we need to hold for a few more days.
No, that's actually a fantastic point, and that has been, I hate to say the biggest challenge, because there's been a lot of challenges over the last few months, but one of the biggest challenges is trying to communicate with clarity without getting too specific. And when you're not too specific, then folks fill in the blanks that haven't been filled in. And so we will need to revisit some of the early meetings, because there was not clarity about exactly what the actual on the first day of school return to learn plan would be. We do think we're going to have tremendous capacity in terms of transportation as well as food service. That's where I spent a lot of my time today and toward the end of last week. So it's a very fluid situation, and we are talking about literally working through these dynamics one student at a time. And so actually, Ms. Sawyer and I had this conversation earlier this afternoon. These IEP meetings are not wholly satisfactory because, for instance, we may be in a position to offer transportation, but we can't say at the time of the IEP meeting exactly what that transportation will look like, because we have to take the collective and work out a system to meet all the needs. But I'm absolutely confident that we're going to be able to meet all the transportation needs and largely all of the in-person instruction needs, but we can't do that with one IEP team meeting with one student and making the decision right there and then in terms of specific times, when pickup will be, when drop-off will be, exactly what times the in-person instruction will be. But collectively, which will move forward much more quickly, I believe, after tonight, I believe we'll have a much clearer picture that we can communicate to each of those individual families. But I feel very good about what we're going to be able to do for those families for whom that fully virtual instruction is just not going to work. We certainly recognize that. And frankly, for all of our students, 100% virtual is never what I would wish under normal circumstances. but we are going to continue to stay very much on top of the science around COVID-19, as well as the local conditions, and respond accordingly, knowing that there's not a one size fits all. So when we talk about 100% virtual, we're really using the language of the state, saying we're going to have a hybrid, either completely in person or a hybrid that meets very specific metrics, or 100% virtual. Nothing that I have proposed to date has met any of those exactly. And that's largely because we're attempting to assess the needs of the wide range of contexts and personal situations that each of our students have, and create personal solutions for each of them. And so what the return to learn plan for DMPS looks like in a responsible response to the COVID-19 situation doesn't fit real neatly into the two boxes that the state has laid out for us. And that's complicated communication for sure.
Board colleagues, any other additional questions just regarding our return to learn plan? Okay, without any further questions or discussions, Ms. Jenkins, can you please call our vote?
Mr. Barron?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Cody?
Yes.
Ms. Delagardelle?
Yes.
Mrs. Martirano?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
All right, motion passes 7-0. The next item on our agenda is item D3, return to learn waiver application. Dr. Ahart, I will turn this over to you for introduction before calling any speakers about this item.
Thank you. So I'm getting tired of talking about this. Editorial comment. I want to emphasize that I could not be more proud of the team that we have working to serve the kids of Des Moines Public Schools, and we worked very hard to make sure that we were fully informed by the opinions of our families and the needs of our families as we created a plan and rolled out on July 1, which was, if not the first, one of the very first in the state to roll out a detailed plan. Did we think it was perfect? No, we did not. We do have financial, physical plant, and health-related restrictions on what it is that we were able to do. But I can tell you that we expended as much creativity and intellectual and time power that we could on this issue. We rolled out this plan and then had essentially the rug pulled out from underneath us after we already had over 9,000 students registered. So what we are seeking in this waiver is largely what we thought was the case with Senate File 2130, and that is allow our school board, who works very hard to reflect the values of our community, to make return to learn decisions that respect the context of the COVID-19 pandemic, to be responsive to the context as it relates to the diversity of our community. I want to emphasize with all of those listening who may not be frequent participants in our meeting that over 62% of our students are students of color, and it has been more than clear that our families of color have suffered disproportionately from COVID-19. That's a fact that's not lost on the district. I know it's not lost on the board, and it's certainly not lost on me and my team. So what we're attempting to do is advance the academic goals of the district in a way that is safe, for our students, that is safe for our very dedicated staff, and for both the students and staff's families that they return home to every evening. So what we're seeking in this waiver is a few exceptions. Number one, to start fully virtual, and presently the conditions as reported by Polk County Health and Iowa Department of Public Health do not reflect a 15 to 20% positivity rate. We could argue about whether those numbers are accurate as reported, but as reported, we do not meet the metrics as put out by the Iowa Department of Public Health. So we're asking for that exception, to start fully virtual, even though that metric has not been met as reported by Polk County or Iowa Department of Public Health. And then the second metric that they have has to do with absenteeism rate, and obviously because school hasn't started, we don't have a figure to report on that. The second piece of that non-compliance, if you will, that we're seeking a waiver for is in returning to, as we phase in-person instruction, to allow us to return to, or not return because we have never been there, but to phase into a hybrid model that also does not meet the state's interpretation of Senate File 2130, which means that 50% or more of instruction has to happen in person, and that 50% or more is calculated on a 2-week basis, which is another complication that was unanticipated and feels like an overreach. So we do think that if our community takes this pandemic seriously, that over the course of the year, we can open up our schools gradually, more broadly, and hopefully if we have new therapeutics in place, which we're anticipating hopefully in January, and if we have more accurate and rapid turnaround time testing that hopefully, and less expensive, I should add, that hopefully is available in January, that with those tools, we can do a more comprehensive return to learn that's more in person, and over the course of the year, meet that 50% requirement. But over a 2-week period, 2 weeks over 2 weeks over 2 weeks, we just don't think that that's reasonable or safe. So we're asking for an exception in that regard as well. So what I would do, if the board approves this, is submit tonight a waiver to the Department of Education, and they have reported that they will do their best to respond to each waiver request over a 48-hour period. So I would hope by close of business on Wednesday, we would have a response from the department as to whether or not that waiver was accepted or rejected.
Okay. Ms. Jenkins, do we have any speakers on this item?
Yes, we have one. Miranda Nicoli, sorry.
Yeah, hi, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
So I just wanted to kind of publicly speak out and affirm my support for submitting this waiver. Iowa is a hot spot for COVID-19, and I know that there are some rhetoric saying that our children, have a better chance of surviving this and da 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 da. But at what point do we decide that, their lives are worth it? At what point do we decide that we can't get a little bit creative and just go to online learning and just make it through until this pandemic is over? I understand a lot of parents' concerns. I'm also a single mother, and I'm having to, instead of sending my kid to preschool, I'm having to pay a lot more money to hire a private babysitter. So I understand the concern and everything. But, I honestly think that 1, 2, 3, or, the hundreds of kids that die here in Iowa, I think that's too many for us to go back and start in-person learning, especially because we've seen that adults are having a hard time with social distancing and mask mandates and things of the sort. How are we to expect children to how are we to expect children to adhere to these when, you know, they don't have as much discipline as adults? And, you know, anybody who's met a child knows that they're going to be running around licking their hands and chasing each other around saying like, coronavirus, and not really realizing that they are putting themselves in danger when they do those kind of things. So I would encourage, I would just like to shore up the fact that I support the move to, you know, online learning and not a 100% in-person learning.
Thank you for your comments this evening. Ms. Jenkins, do we have any further speakers?
No, I had no others signed up.
Okay, before I open this up to discussion and questions from the board, I would entertain a motion on item D3.
Caldwell Johnson, move approval.
Barron, second.
We have a motion by Caldwell Johnson and a second by Barron. I will open this up for discussions and questions from my board colleagues.
Hey, Tom. So one question about the I don't know, the guidance to when it's allowable to go online. That they have the two factors with the community or the positive spread rate and the absentee rate. Does that absentee rate account for staff, or is that just kids, or is that unclear?
No, it's very clear. It's just students, and in the new guidance, it specifies that it's students who are absent due to COVID-19.
So if it were 5% gone from regular illness and 5% COVID, that wouldn't meet the threshold?
Correct.
Any other questions or discussion from board colleagues? Mr. Barron.
Yeah, Madam Chair. I've been thinking about this one a lot. Obviously, this is basically what's dominated our summers. At one point this afternoon, I thought, well, gosh, how many times have we met since the beginning of July? Because we normally have one meeting in July and one meeting in August, and I think we've surpassed that just about every week. And that's not to complain, right? I mean, that's just what we signed up for. But you know, we got a lot of emails today, and I did my best to read, I think, every single one of them. And I probably shouldn't disclose that publicly because I am a paid employee during the day. But you know, it's interesting reading those, and you take away a couple of themes on this, and I, you know, the more I think about this, the more I think, you know, we're on incredibly uneven and shaky ground right now as a board, as a district, as a country, and the interesting, you know, when we meet as a board, we meet and we do our work. We speak to each other as a board more often than and to our staff. We don't really speak publicly. That's not the nature of a board. But I wanted to say a couple of things tonight and direct them mostly at the community. You know, we've been hearing from a lot of folks lately, and there's a couple of things that stood out to me, and I listened to people talking earlier today, you know, movingly of the reasons to go virtual or the reasons to come back, and I haven't found anybody I disagree with, really, and that's what makes this so difficult. And we got an email a couple weeks ago from a teacher in this district who described making plans to send her daughter to live with her parents out in rural Iowa for the semester, back when we were planning to come back in. Her daughter had a pre-existing condition, and she was worried about bringing the virus home to her. And so they were making plans for her to be away from her daughter for 4 months. You know, on the other side, we got an email over the weekend from a parent who described very movingly and in great detail the symptoms of depression that our kids are showing, and tied those to their lack of in-person stimulation. We can't make both sides happy, and that's what's so hard. But I relay some of this stuff to folks when they email me, and I don't seek pity. I don't think any of us do, right? We're fortunate to be in these roles, and that's what's important, right? Is that we are in these roles. We were elected, and 2 items ago, you brought us a new policy, because what we're here to do really is to channel our community's values into policy, and then to put that policy on our district and ask them to meet those goals. And that's a weighty responsibility, but and not one that any of us anticipated in this environment, but it's one we all signed up for. And so, I've seen people go back and forth with us on in-person versus virtual, and I understand that what we're advocating for is that we start virtually, nearly 100%. But really, what we're asking for from the state in our waiver is not any particular model. It's our local responsibility. It's the local control of that responsibility, and that's what I want our community to understand too. Is you elected us not specifically for this task, but to be your arbiters and to weigh everything. And I think we're doing it. I went for a walk on Saturday. I actually got a text from a friend, and she said, "Hey, listen, I want to talk to you about sports." I said, "Okay." So I snuck out. I went for a walk and talked to her for about 15 minutes about the whole thing. And on the way back, I run into a neighbor who's walking his dogs, and he's a pediatrician, so there's a lot of at-risk kids, and he has 2 kids in the district. So quite literally, I started a walk talking about return to learn, and I ended a walk talking about return to learn. And the point I make is, we're local elected officials, right? We're right here in the community. Like this is our responsibility to make these types of calls. And Tom referenced our meeting with the State Department of Ed a couple weeks ago. Prior to that, we met with Governor Reynolds and the director of the Department of Ed. And that's what I told her. I said, listen, I'm not looking for any great privilege in asking for this waiver. I want to be put in the frying pan on this one, but I feel like that's what we signed up for as board members. And folks need to understand, we're not asking ostensibly to favor virtual over in person. We're just asking to be given that responsibility as elected officials to make that call. And the last thing I want to say, actually, there's 2 more things I guess I want to say, but I've been thinking about this meeting for a couple of weeks now, and longer still because we've had to reschedule it a couple of times. But Governor Reynolds has been on my mind, and this part of what I want to say is not necessarily just focused at my folks here in Des Moines, but hopefully folks around the state will hear this as well. Our governor has really been an agent of instability for us as a district. Tom mentioned the guidance that she gave on July 16th, which effectively nullified our plan. We had 9,000 families already register under that plan. We'd been in meetings with the community nonstop. The Department of Education had our plan for all those 2 weeks and not said a word to us about this. All of that work kind of crumbles on us when they come to us with these late in the game guidance. And then Friday, the Department of Ed puts out the guidance relative to activities. Coincidentally, or not so, 3 days right before an important deadline to certify participation in those activities. All of this stuff only makes it harder for us to make the decisions we need to make. We've already referenced the challenges with childcare, special education. It's not, we're giving away time here because the state keeps changing the game on us in the middle of the process. But there's another component of this too that the governor's done that I feel like needs to be addressed on the record here. And she's kind of laid out three different penalties for us as a district or any district that should we go against her decree. And the first one of those was additional days. Now, I remember this from other conversations, but Tom, you've said before it's about $1 million a day to run our district in terms of people and buildings and everything. So, the threat of adding days at the end of the calendar year brings a lot of risk to us, not the least of which being financial risk. We don't have millions of dollars to throw at this. The other one, the second one that she announced on the 16th was licensure for Tom and his people, threatening that were we to go down this route. And that one really galls me on a number of levels. Tom is in effect a public employee. He's a teacher. In fact, earlier this afternoon, I sent Tom and Matt and Noel an email. These are the three people that are most responsible from our perspective with these plans. And I just asked him, hey, what were your first jobs in education? I was kind of curious. And I love the answers that I got. Tom was oh goodness, I'm going to bring this up now again here. Full-time teacher at Glenwood Springs High School in Roaring Fork RE1 school district. Taught English 1, 2, 3, speech, drama, just about everything. I think you taught everything. Noelle gave the best answer because she started as a first grade teacher here at King. And Matt gave my favorite answer because his first job in education was as an 8th grade science teacher, where he met his wife, who was teaching at the same school. And I bring all that up because these are the people, whether it's in Des Moines or it's in another district across the state, that the governor has threatened their licensure, threatened their vocation for acting in the best interest of kids. And that's wrong. And then Friday, the State Department of Ed, which, really I think was acting on behalf of the governor, threatens our children's ability to play sports, to be in speech and debate, to do the activities that are so meaningful to them. These are not the actions of a leader, right? These are the actions of a bully. And as elected officials, as local elected officials, I think it's our responsibility to stand up to that. It's not necessarily to say what's right in any other school district, but to speak loudly about what we think is right in our district and to weigh everything that is so terribly challenging about this and to allow it to gray our hair and keep us up at night, but to take that responsibility seriously. And that's all we're asking for from the state when we make this waiver, is to put ourselves in that frying pan. I've mentioned those emails that I've been reading, and I know my colleagues even do a better job at getting back to folks than even I do. But one of the themes I get out of there when I write back to folks is, whether they agree with virtual learning or not, they're always really understanding. They always know how challenging this is, and everybody, no matter what perspective they have on it, they get it. And so that the last point I want to make is the governor is not a member of our school district. Last I checked, she's not on our board. She's not a paid employee of our district, and we can't let her divide us on things like this. We're in the middle of a pandemic. We're in the middle of something none of us anticipated we'd ever deal with in our public lives or our private lives. And I want our community to come out of this together stronger, because eventually we will be returning to learning, and we need to have each other's backs when it's time to do that. So I've said a lot. I don't normally do stuff like this. I typically like to be the last one or not speak at all. But I wanted to say a little bit of this stuff tonight, mostly for our community. So I hope folks are hopefully a little bit more reassured. You've got a good board. You've got people that really care about your kids, and for our staff, you've got people that want to do right by you and your families. And that extends to Tom and his team. and we will continue to do that, no matter what it happens. And the only thing I wish we could bring you is more certainty right now, but that's beyond our control at this point. But we'll continue to do the next best thing that's in front of us. So thank you for the opportunity to speak, Madam Chair, and I appreciate the allowance for the long-winded speech there.
I actually really appreciate your calming voice at this time, Mr. Barron. So thank you for that. Both in the way that you speak, but also in what you say. I think it's always very reassuring. Board colleagues, any other questions, discussion? I will just offer a moment of vulnerability, both to my board colleagues, but also to our community. As many of you know, I myself am a classroom teacher. I'm starting my 8th year of teaching. I teach at an adjacent district in a different county to Des Moines. And currently, while we speak, they're discussing whether or not we go back 5 days a week in person or whether they go back hybrid. And I will tell you that I've been back as I'm a new to district teacher, and there has not been a day since I've been back that I have not cried in my classroom, whether it's for my own health and safety, whether it's for the students in Des Moines, whether it's for the students in that district that I know desperately want to go back to school and need to see their teachers. There are no good decisions at this time. And I think I would just echo the sentiment of Mr. Barron to let those of us on the ground in our communities to make these decisions. And I do truly appreciate all the messages that we've gotten from our community. I have not gotten a chance to respond to each and every one of them, but I am reading them and I'm weighing those in each decision that I make. If there are any other board colleagues that have anything that they would like to say at this time, I will go ahead and let you do that. Mr. Cody?
Yeah, well, mine's not nearly as profound as Kirsten's and Rob's, but I do want to talk a little bit about the hinge that the Department of Ed and the Reynolds administration are putting on this in terms of, hybrid, online, in person, is that they're looking at that Senate file and we're, putting a lot of weight on how we presume that the priority is in-person learning. I feel like we're forgetting about the meaning of presumption, right? When we talk about schools, we presume the kids are going to show up, the bell's going to ring, they're going to get their books, get back on the bus, right? This summer, I presumed I was going to spend a lot of time at the pool with my daughter. I was going to play soccer every Saturday. I also presumed there wouldn't be almost 1,000 dead Iowans at this point in the game. These are things that I didn't count on when I thought about my summer plans. But that's the thing with presumption, right? By definition, you're presuming, you're making a choice before you have all the information. And when new information presents itself, those presumptions need to change. In this case, the new information is a pandemic. We need to adapt. We can't just bury our heads and wish it away. And then to circle back, I mean, if I were to make a new presumption right now, we keep hearing the governor talk about how we can't have a mask mandate because it's too one-size-fits-all to work for Iowa. But I wonder how that logic applies when we're talking about a one-size-fits-all set of metrics set. It's really one, but how is having one metric, one size fit all for the state appropriate when one size fit all is not when it comes to masks and other basic safety procedures?
Thank you, Mr. Cody. Any other board colleagues at this time? All right, Ms. Jenkins, I will ask you to call the vote. Just to remind board members and the public, the vote that's on the table is to approve Superintendent Ahart's recommendation that the district pursue a waiver to begin the year completely virtual, knowing that we can always move between the pieces of our plan as is best appropriate.
Mr. Barron?
Yes.
Ms. Bradley?
Yes.
Ms. Caldwell-Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Cody?
Yes.
Ms. Delagardelle?
Yes.
Ms. Martorano?
Yes.
Ms. Sawyer?
Yes.
Motion passes 7-0. The next item on our agenda is item D4, Student Governance Framework. I believe this is just a discussion only item. Ms. Bradley, could you please introduce this item?
Yes, I apologize if you hear any background noise. My headphones went out and I've got someone else in my house having a meeting at the same time I am. So apologize if you hear my dad's laughter. I have wanted to start working on our students' outcome focused governance framework, which I know has kind of felt like it's been lost at this time with everything that's been going on in our world right now. And so Kim and I were answering a call with some, I'm hearing background, so I apologize, with AJ and some other school board members across the nation, actually. And they were just talking about what they're doing with their districts currently with their student governance framework and just how some things are going. So Kim and Kelly and I reached out to them to see if we could kind of have a deeper conversation on what that would look like for our board and how we could start putting some things into action, even in this pandemic era that we're in right now. And so we came up with a list of things, took those to AJ, who did what he does best and kind of guided our conversations to kind of help us with a path forward. And so what we would like to do is create this ad hoc committee that would just allow us to be able to bring ideas to the board to continue to uplift the framework that we said that we were going to commit to. And so our first recommendation is that we have a work session so that we can start looking at our goals and having a deeper conversation about that, of how we move forward, with the hopes that we can also look at what monitoring and looking at our monitoring calendar. So I don't want to speak too long about it, but it's just something for the three of us we really want to dig into. And so I talked to Kirsten about us creating this ad hoc committee just to do that so that we could continue to bring recommendations to the board as we move forward with that framework.
Great. And I thank the three of you. Ms. Martirano's kind of been in, well, it was extended even by almost a week of how long she's been waiting to join us on our board. And I thank you guys for taking that time to do those. I believe they're during your workday, so I know that you're scheduling some time around that to make that happen. I don't see any reason why we should not move forward with an ad hoc committee that would take a look at some of our policies and our monitoring processes, particularly during this pandemic time. But I'm fully prepared to, to use my chair authority to appoint an ad hoc committee. But if any other board members have questions for Dwana, I'll open it up for that first. No? All right. Then I will go ahead and appoint an ad hoc committee led by my vice chair, my very capable vice chair, Ms. Bradley, with Ms. Martirano and Ms. Sawyer assisting. And we look forward to hearing your recommendations from that work soon. Probably October would be my guess. That will give you a little bit of time to do that. The next item on our agenda is we have a couple information only items, which are notification of award of competitive quotes, I believe. And then following that, we have items of privilege. The first thing that I want to do is I want to follow up here with just a reinforcement of a statement that I shared at the end of our public forum, but just related to activities. So health and safety, are the primary concern of our board, but they cannot be the only consideration. Extracurricular activities occupy an important place in education, and for many DMPS students, participation in activities keeps them motivated and engaged in their classwork. Unlike much online instruction, many activities must be done in person. They are also entirely voluntary and not compulsory the same way that academics are. And we respect the choices that our student, staff, and their families will make regarding whether they participate in extracurricular activities this fall or not. Activities involve relatively smaller groups of students rather than the entire student body, making contact tracing easier and more effective at preventing the spread of COVID-19 than it would be in a building with several hundred or, upwards of 1,000 students and staff present every day. DMPS will continue to support in-person sports and activities at this time. I've spoken with Dr. Ahart, and he said that he and his staff are going to be closely monitoring the situation and adjusting course as needed to support the health and safety of our community, which may also, that could include suspending practices or games if we have, depending on the incidents or what's happening in our community. We're going to expect that coaches, staff, and students will fully abide by all of our COVID-19 guidelines set out both by our state athletic and activities organizations, and that failure to do so could result in the end of a program season through no fault other than we're not following the proper guidelines to keep everyone safe. Now that I've shared that little bit of business, I want to offer my official congratulations to Ms. Martirano, who is our newest board member. I would also invite other board colleagues to share their welcome. We're looking forward to doing your orientation on Wednesday. We've had to push that back now because of weather. And I would also invite you, Kim, if you want to, share any words with board colleagues or with our community by way of introduction or anything else that you feel is appropriate at this time.
I haven't prepared anything, but it's certainly an interesting time to join this team. But I'm very glad to be here, and really, I'm glad to do what's best for students and teachers and the entire community, and they all deserve it. So it's hard work, but it's the right work, and I'm so glad I have wonderful colleagues by my side to take on this work with. So thank you for your appointment. I look forward to our work together.
Thank you. We're very fortunate that you went through the process of running last fall, and you feel pretty ready. I think to most of us, just hit the ground running and jump in on this work. Obviously, we will miss Heather Anderson and her voice on this board, but we are very grateful that you are here. I would open up the floor to any other board colleagues who have any items of privilege that they wish to share at this time. Okay, without anything, Dr. Ahart, I know that you probably have some remarks or something that you would like to update us on, or maybe not. Maybe you gave us all the updates during our meeting. I don't know.
No, I would like to say something. So Eli just waved at everyone too. He thinks I'm supposed to be done by now.
He's almost done.
Almost time. I just first of all, I need to thank this board. This board has been, over my entire tenure as superintendent, has gotten higher and tighter on following disciplined policy governance, which is difficult work. And I think really the only board, at least in our state, that really has been disciplined toward that. And while that does give up what a lot of people think they sign up for to be a board member, it also provides tremendous power and focus for the entire system. And I think we see that very evident in the work that's happening right now, especially, that Kirsten said, well, we shouldn't be voting on operational plans. A change in state code because of Senate File 2130 required that. And so the board has made an adjustment to their policy governance manual to reflect that on a temporary basis. Our community, hopefully there's still a lot of people on, has to understand how focused and dedicated this board has been and how disciplined they've been on a student-focused, student outcomes-focused governance model. And the biggest frustration, aside from the obvious, for our board, I think, has been all of this distraction, pulling them away from where their focus has been. And I know that there's absolute dedication to getting back there. And Ms. Bradley spoke to that just a few moments ago. Our staff has been exceedingly patient. Their stamina has been extraordinary. And I feel bad. I feel bad for how hard I've pushed everyone. But I got to tell you, Rob spoke to Noelle and Matt. And that goes all the way through the system. Our custodians put themselves in harm's way when we really didn't know much about COVID-19 and jumped in there and made sure that all of our spaces were absolutely safe and suitable for our kids. Our transportation department did the very same thing. making sure that our buses were absolutely safe, even though our kids didn't get to get back on them this spring. It's hard to describe the machinations that our entire staff has been through, and largely that's not been in physical labor. It's been in the stress and strain of trying to discover what the right thing to do is for our kids and for our community. I couldn't ask for a better team, and frankly, our team couldn't ask for a better board to feel supported in expending that energy, that stretching us intellectually and creatively to try to figure out how to navigate this, this hopefully once in a lifetime circumstance. And the World Health Organization is not saying now that this is the worst pandemic in a century. That's what everybody was talking about in March and April. They're saying it's the worst pandemic in 10 generations. There are unique elements of this pandemic that none of us has encountered before, and that's really where true leadership is tested. And certainly this board has stood up to that challenge, despite some other ancillary hurdles that have been placed in our way from policymakers. So I just want to express my gratitude to our community for hanging in there with us, for demonstrating grace and patience, to our board for steadfastly providing the leadership and guidance that we need to forge on with what especially the youngest members of our community so desperately need. And again, to our staff, this has been really hard for everybody. And the uncertainty that professionals have been suffering through for the last several months, trying to figure out what this means, not just for their professional life, but also for their personal life, and trying to maintain their commitments to their family, their responsibility to their family, but also their responsibility to the children that we serve, the families of the children that we serve, and to the broader community, because what we do as one of the largest employers and certainly the largest service provider in the metro area has an impact way beyond what we normally think about day to day, is vitally important. So in short, thank you everyone for expending so much time and energy in discovering what is right and doing what is right.
Thank you, Dr. Ahart. Without any further business before us, I'm going to call this meeting of the Des Moines Public School Board adjourned at 8:46 p.m. Thank you to our community for showing up and your attention and all of your emails during this time. So thank you, everyone. Have a great night.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.